Teachers, have you ever been attracted to your students before? As a TA, I found several of my students physically attractive. Of course, they were 18 to 19, and that kind of ruined everything else. I do know of a fellow grad student who did end up marrying one of his students, though they waited to start dating until after the class was over. But considering the age difference between students and TAs is often less than 7 years at the most, not really that odd to find out. Now, one of the extremely attractive female TAs did get asked out by one of her freshman students. She declined by laughing at him, so I am sure that was an awkward semester for him. My calc teacher in high school was in his 40s and a total badass. Girls swooned when he wore his pirate costume on Halloween. His somewhat younger wife got in a car accident and realized she was a lesbian. He was such a hunk, she didn't even know that she didn't like men until that life-changing experience. After she divorced him, his girlfriend was a 25-year-old former student from his city college course, whom he would drive around in his Porsche. It happens, but ideally after she's no longer your student. Keep it classy, Mr. H. Yes, I'm a 27-year-old male, and the majority of my students are 20 to 24, so I don't think it is weird that I find some of them hot. I would obviously never do anything with any of them, especially if they were still my student. I've even had a few female students ask me out and such, but I just can't do it. I would feel like I was taking advantage of my authority over them. Although, according to my department, I can have sex with my students even while they are in my class taking a course from me. Weird. I teach 14 to 18-year-olds, and I'd be lying if I were to say I don't find any of them attractive. I'm 24 myself, and as the young teacher, I get a lot of flirtatious behavior from a fair number of students. Although, let me clarify that 16 here is legal, though not of course with your own student, and it's only the 16 plus to whom this applies. Though, again, honestly, there are mature 15-year-olds who do look older. What I will say though is that there's a huge difference between finding someone attractive and being tempted by them. There is something about the teacher and student dynamic which I think thoroughly undermines the physical attraction at play. The position of trust you're placed in, at least for me, creates a big mental block. The only somewhat similar situation I could imagine is with a stepdaughter or son, where there's the potential for, and occasional case of, physical attraction, but where, except for specific individuals, the relationship dynamic plays out very differently. It's nice to know you're desired, and I think it's a much more sexually charged situation than people are willing to admit, but I truly think that the majority of this is on the side of the student. Any purely physical or emotional attraction very quickly subsides into a much more paternal or elder sibling affection. TLDR, honestly, yes, but it's kept in check by an instinctive mental block and undermined by a relationship dynamic based on trust. I have never once been attracted to students, but I know some of the male teachers have been. There is a dance class at our school, and I did an on-call for it. One of the guys asked what my on-call was, and when I said this dance class, the male teachers all had that dirty old man laugh together about it. The girls wear those dance shorts that are essentially underwear, and at the beginning of the class, they do a bunch of stretches that involve bending over. I've never been attracted to a student, not even a little bit, neither post-secondary or secondary. But I can tell you the most uncomfortable, I can't believe we are doing this, that I've ever felt. The first pep rally. We spend a whole month going through the handbook about what guys and girls can and cannot wear and what kind of behavior is permissible. Absolutely, positively, nothing even hinting at anything sexual. If you haven't seen a high school handbook in a while, it's practically a Puritan's handbook on how to kill all joy in the world of young adults, especially anything that even hints at the teeniest little bit about sex. And then there's that damn pep rally. Fuck the dress codes, screw the puritanical state, hide the lawyers. The whole point is for girls to flash everything, while the football guys get front row seats. For one thing, the uniform is nowhere near dress code compliant. It's quite a bit more graphic than when I was in school. You've still got your leg kicks and twirls to flash panties, which violates no less than 1,000,000 handbook codes, but then there's the whole dance routine. I'm not saying as an undergrad I ever went to a strip club to see what it was about, but I can say I've developed some theories on what the cheerleader directors might have been doing in school. I have these girls in math. Some of them had to leave early to change. This is what the school and community are sanctioning instead of equations. The junior high girls have been running around in this since lunch. Junior high! That's 12 to 13 years old. Hell, one pep rally was completely in the dark. So, yeah, it's not directly related to your question, but in the puritanical universe of public schools, I was totally unprepared for the outright sexual energy displayed at a pep rally. I got a super attractive student sprung on me by surprise one day. I was asked to conduct English interviews for my Japanese students, and I hadn't taught this grade before. I'd been dealing with shy, nervous kids all day who were just super boring. One girl had even drooled into her lap and then started crying. In walks this kid and says, "Hey, gimme high five." He sits down and has the most amazing eyes I've ever seen. Most Japanese people have really dark eyes. This kid's were gold with touches of green. I've never seen anything like it. He was really keen to do well in the interview, and I found out later he loved English class, so he's leaning forward and making lots of eye contact. He's got this amazingly cheeky grin, and his eyes light up every time. I had to talk to him about his hobbies and what he liked, and he was so enthusiastic, watching me closely to gauge my reactions, seeing if I understood. His English wasn't fluent by any means, but he tried so damn hard and he was so keen. I'd swear he was flirting with me the whole damn time. He graduated a couple weeks later, and I didn't see him again after that, but 7 years later, and I still remember those eyes clear as day. For the record, I was 21 and he was 17, so not that weird. I dated one of my former high school students, but a year after he graduated. Here's the story. I had him as a student when he was 16. I never found him, or really any other of his classmates, attractive. In fact, we barely spoke to one another in class, and I wouldn't consider him a memorable student. In fact, I thought he hated my class based on his blank stare. Since I was involved in an extracurricular activity, several of my students had my number and Facebook account to ask questions about events after hours. I much preferred texting to them calling me to ask what time they needed to be at an event. Never were these interactions ever inappropriate. I would have never considered engaging in such discussion. After my students would graduate, they would continue as my Facebook friends and keep me updated with their lives. One night, this particular student contacted me via Facebook chat the summer after he graduated. It was innocuous conversation, mainly about preparing for college and such. We began chatting on a regular basis. At first, he would ask me for advice about his relationship or college or such. We found that we both had a lot in common. Read the same books, similar hobbies, similar sense of humor, etc., and he became a good friend. Things continued this way for almost a year. We just became friends, texting frequently, but never anything intimate. His relationship ended about 6 months prior to my own, and I became uneasy about the potential for an awkward dynamic. I found I was actually looking forward to his texts too much, so I stopped contact for 3 months. I went back to school myself, and I realized I had more in common with people his age than people in my own age bracket. I missed talking to him, so I sent him a text, asked him how he he was. We began texting frequently and eventually started talking on the phone when I had to drive home from school. The conversations at this point were more as peers than him seeking advice from me. One night, I had too much wine and flirted a bit via text with him. He had not been my student for 4 years and had been out of high school for over a year at that point, and I ceased to see any harm in it. This interaction opened up the door to some serious discussion about our feelings for one another, and he asked if I would be willing to enter a relationship with him. I was adamantly opposed at first because of the former teacher and student relationship and the age difference. 11 years. However, I started to realize that we were already in some kind of pseudo-relationship, talking daily, sharing our hopes and dreams, etc., so I agreed to it. When we finally met in person several weeks later, I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. This was not a physical attraction initially. I was completely enamored with his mind and found upon meeting him again that I was equally physically attracted. I was hesitant to enter into anything serious with him initially, but I eventually fell incredibly hard. We didn't go out in public normally for fear of his parents or my former colleagues discovering the relationship. This put a huge strain on things, and he eventually ended it after 6 months. That was the hardest breakup I've had, mainly because I lost my best friend. He contacted me several months later, and we revisited the idea of trying to make the relationship work. He even told his parents about me, but their reaction, as expected, was less than ideal. I couldn't accept that I might cause his relationship with his family to deteriorate, so I told him I couldn't be with him. We both still love one another, but we accept that we cannot be together. We both entered into other serious relationships in an attempt to try to stay friends via text, although it is admittedly difficult. I never thought I would ever, 1, date someone 10 years younger than me, 2, date a former student, 3, ignore both of those things and actually fall in love with someone that met both of those criteria. TLDR, Facebook and texting led to friendship with former student, which eventually led to a relationship 1 year after his high school graduation. In my high school, there was one female teacher who it was widely known by the students that she had favorites. And by favorites, I mean crushes. She would write things on their Facebooks like, "I would write what I want to say, but that'd be inappropriate." Gross. As for myself, I am going to be a teacher now, and through a scholarship program I was able to student teach right out of high school, meaning my students were all my age or possibly even older. I suppose it depends on the person, but I personally found no trouble putting myself in the professional mindset and preventing any inappropriate thought to occur. I had something like 30 students total, mostly male, and never had a problem. My high school math teacher got busted a couple years ago for cheating on his wife with a student. She was an 18-year-old senior, so he probably could have gotten away with it if he wasn't an idiot. It's a DC area school, and Obama was visiting for some photo op. The teacher was making out with the student in his car in the school parking lot and got busted by the goddamn Secret Service. And they just wanted to clear the parking lot, but when a man in black knocked on the window, he panicked. The girl tried to get out of the car and run. He grabbed her, dragged her back into the car, threw a sweatshirt over her head, and tried to drive away. So the Secret Service guy understandably thought he had walked in on an attempted rape or kidnapping of a white female teenager, and police descended like it was the apocalypse. No charges were ultimately filed. It's not illegal to make out with an 18-year-old in your car, but his career was over. Adding insult to injury, his ex-wife is a teacher at the same school. She and all her coworkers saw the whole damn thing happen. When I was 18, there was this PSHE teacher, female, at my boarding school who was widely speculated to have at least come onto a member of the rugby team. Being attractive and eloquent, I decided to use the fact that she had advised my younger then ex-girlfriend, whom she was the tutor of, to break up with me as an in to talk to her about emotional subjects and break the teacher and student barrier. After a couple of conversations, things got a bit more physical, and within 2 weeks, we had slept together. I think she actually started to really like me, as at that point, I was far less scrupulous about ploys I would use to get what I wanted. I had proved my points, but I thought, hey, this one is for the biography, so I continued to occasionally see her once I had left school, as I knew she would be teaching my younger brother, as he is 5 years younger than me, so join schools as I leave. I continued to sleep with her for 2 terms until she suddenly emigrated to Australia, where she was originally from. She was forbidden from saying why this was and always gave vague answers when I asked. When I was in high school, there was an English teacher who was a heinous bitch. She would actually hang out with the popular students and was kind of rude to everyone else. She had gone to my high school when she was a student, so she still acted like one. Her husband was also a teacher at our school, but he, on the contrary, was a wonderful guy and a great teacher. At the end of my junior year, this teacher was rumored to be partying with the seniors, one of whom I had dated a few years prior. So I asked him about it. He brushed it off and said that she had occasionally met up with him and his friends. Come to find out, a few months later, she waited until just after graduation to sleep with him. Everyone heard about it and he never confirmed or denied. However, at the start of my senior year, she was divorced, and her husband had abruptly quit his teaching position and moved across the country. When I ask my ex about it now, he just smiles and says nothing. Blech. I found out the day after my high school graduation that my best friend growing up was fucking one of our teachers for about 6 months prior to graduation. My mind was blown. The teacher was about 27 and newly married. He said they used to fuck after class in the classroom, out in the parking lot, during school assemblies, before class, and in all other sorts of weird places. My friend was always a stud when it came to the ladies, but I never could have imagined this until he told me. Anyway, after graduation, May 2008, the faculty at my high school started to get suspicious. The teacher taught summer school and asked her to leave or she would be fired. Shit hit the fan. Her husband found out she was cheating on him with a student, they got divorced, and now my friend and her are still dating. He seems to be very in love with her, and I think they have a nice relationship, although I have never seen them once together, only couple pictures in their apartment, and her clothes all over the bedroom. I think she is still apprehensive about meeting me because I used to be her student. I'm sure I'll meet her one day. It's just gonna be weird calling her Heather instead of Miss C. I took swimming in college. I was typically 4 years older than the rest of the class because I did 4 years in the military. So I, male, was around my swim teachers, female, age, whom was a grad student. I ran into her at a bar and we were talking a bit. I was with my girlfriend that night, but we weren't all over each other, so a new person may think that we were friends. Several drinks later, my teacher asks my girlfriend if she was taking me home that night. My girlfriend said that I was going home with her, my girlfriend, and that was that. It was a little weird the next class session, but we got over quick. Now that I'm a teacher at a university, I definitely find some students attractive, but I would not do anything with them. In fact, I had one student that was doing terribly in my class come up to me, stated that she thought that she deserved at least a C, and rested her tits on my forearm. We were both standing, I'm a bit taller than her, and my arm was at a right angle with my hand on the podium. I immediately pulled away, said that her grade is her grade, and as soon as class finished, I informed the faculty. Fuck that. I'm not losing my career for sex, especially since I don't have much trouble getting it anyway. To add more, that same class, there was another student that was always smiling at me and being really cute. As soon as the semester ended, she added me on Facebook and started talking. But I kept it professional. Nothing happened. I also have some students that will come in for office hours to ask about coursework stuff, but eventually the conversation turns into what I like doing and what she likes doing. That's when I ask if she has any more school-related questions. If not, see you in class. Hi, not a teacher, but I will be teaching in the fall. I've spent a lot of time in high schools in my years of college. Honestly, God, no. You think to yourself, oh my God, high school chicks are so hot. But dude, I've spent the last 5 years hanging out with basically a bunch of females. Really attractive females, education majors are for the most part women, and for the most part, so hot. Basically, at the point I'm at right now, high school chicks come off as stuck-up bitches that I would want to punch. There is something to be said for the attractiveness of a woman over a girl. The way they carry themselves, the way they dress, the way that someone over the age of 20 knows how to actually put on makeup without caking the shit on. You, or at least I, got to the point that I looked on most of the girls I'd see when going to high schools as that annoying little sister pretty quickly. High school girls? No. But being an education major has given me a huge hot librarian fetish. Arr. Not me, but in my 7th grade science class, we had a fairly young teacher, in her 20s, and there was a boy in class who was taller and more built than most of the other guys in class. Him and the teacher always talked to each other and flirted. A few times I even saw her sit on his lap because he was sitting in her chair. It made the class awkward. Not sure if they did anything outside of class or not. There wasn't any proof that they did, so nothing was said. Plus, we all just felt like it wasn't our business. But you can definitely tell they were attracted to each other. My friend was dating a high school teacher from a couple counties over earlier this year, and the dude said this guy used to fuck one of the students in the back of his classroom after school, but no one told until a student caught them, and at least 6 other teachers knew about it for months. And I know about 4 teacher, administrator, security guard, student affairs that went on at my school that never got out, and one unexpected case that was revealed with a band teacher and 2 flag girls. With that last case, the article said he was also sleeping with a faculty member. Me and my friends tried endlessly to find out who it was. I did what was called a field experience class. This was where we wanted to become a teacher. We would go out and observe what the teachers would do for an 8-hour period, which would involve preparing lectures, supervising study hall, or whatever. During this time, I had a very cool male teacher who taught history, government, and a couple other social studies classes. It was my freshman year of college, so I was only 18, and most of these kids were only a few months younger than me. The girls that would come up and ask him questions, you could see them intentionally bump into him or do that flirt slap. I asked him during the break in between classes how he handles that kind of thing all day. He said, "Easy. I go home and have some of the best sex of my life with my wife." He said that it keeps his libido up and his wife doesn't care why. After spending 2 weeks in class, I started to experience the same thing. He would repeatedly leave the classroom for extended periods, allowing me to answer any questions of the students. I guess it's an authority type thing. It can be a turn-on for girls at that age. I could have been one of their classmates, but because I was in a place of slight power, I actually got more attention than I did in high school from the opposite sex. I actually dated 2 of the girls while I was doing my field experience. I was actually encouraged by the teacher. I think he liked to think he was living vicariously through me. My science teacher in grade 10 was this 38-year-old ex-football star, still in the peak of his prime too. 6'2", 200 pounds of muscle. By all means an attractive man. And of course every girl in that class was in love with him. The crazy thing was, though, he would talk to this one particular girl in the class, the tall, skinny, popular one, in a sort of not quite flirtatious way. She was 15, and he'd be giving her all sorts of compliments all the time. Wouldn't be surprised to find out they had an affair. Guy was the douchiest teacher I've ever had. He was essentially a Guido before such a thing as Guidos existed. Also, he has a wife and 2 kids.